4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to HVAC Success Secrets Revealed, a show where we interview industry leaders and disruptors, revealing the success secrets to create and unleash the ultimate HVAC business. Now your hosts, Thaddeus and Evan.
Hey, welcome back to another HVAC Success Secrets Revealed with Thaddeus and Evan, where we have good conversations with good people, and any good conversation worth having is worth having drunk. Cheers, Al, Thaddeus. Cheers. I know you got a beer today.
Oh, is that a Moosehead Lager?
I didn't. I was supposed to cover the label because I'm not getting paid for sponsorship. But darn it,
brand placement.
I said yes.
That is a Canadian beer, Moosehead Lager.
Canadian beer.
I am a fan. I am a fan. No question about it.
It is a good beer. It is a good beer.
Yeah, and I've reached the point in life where I won't drink bad beer, and it's not just because I have to watch my carbs. So if I'm going to watch my carbs, I only get to invest in a beer periodically, and it better be really good. I don't want beer that tastes like water, and I'm not going to trounce your favorite beer out there, you light beer drinkers. I'm drinking a beer.
It's okay. Sometimes you need to hydrate, right?
Yeah.
Like you said, it's 100 degrees down there right now, 104. You're out on the golf course.
Yep.
Sometimes you need to hydrate and get a Bud Light. So
this is medicinal.
There you go.
Yeah, but it isn't Whiskey Wednesday. Obviously, I was not prepared, which is bad for somebody who prides himself on being prepared. I didn't really check my bourbon stock, and those damn kids of mine drank me out.
Bastards.
Quote unquote kids.
They're 38. Yeah, it's about
Well, then accurate. They drink you out of house and home. So
they did. We locked the door after they left.
Well, for those of you that are tuning in, Al Levi is our guest today. He's back on the podcast. If you actually watch that intro video, you'll see his face right in the middle of it at one point.
I did see that.
It's a quick second, but you're in there. We made sure.
I really haven't changed. Look exactly the same.
Same room, same shirt, same everything.
Same shirt. Yeah, just another day. Just another day.
Just another day.
Another great day.
Absolutely. Every day is a great day when you're Evan.
Every day is a great day.
Al is the president of the 7 Power Contractor based out of Scottsdale, Arizona. He wrote the book, The 7 Power Contractor. And today we're diving into specifically staffing. And it's funny, this is actually our 3rd week in a row where we've had a business coach for the home services on the show. We covered sales the first week with Gene Slade. Last week, we covered some operations with TJ. This week, staffing. And this is definitely one of the biggest struggles right now in the industry that we keep hearing about, but it's always been a struggle. I don't give a shit what point in time you were running your business. Staffing was always a struggle at some point, and it was something that great businesses figured out. And Al has certainly set the foundation and set the plan in place for how you can figure it out for your business too. So I'm excited to get into this conversation here today, Al.
I'm excited to share with you. I mean, my company was started in 1936 out of my grandfather's gas station. For all of you, I wasn't around in those days, so stop laughing. The reality is we showed up as the 3rd generation, myself, my 2 older brothers, and worked with my dad. And my dad and my uncle, who really kind of grew the company and took it into the heating business originally, they were always faced with how do we get great staff? And they did something that probably none of you out there did. They went out and stole the competition's techs.
Never.
And so my brothers and I followed the same mold, which is you hear about a great tech, you start calling them up, you follow them to wherever you see them at a gas station or whatever, and you ought to come work for us. And then, of course, we overpay them, or otherwise, why would you leave your job to come to us? Right. So ultimately, we called these people dollar hoppers, which meant they would hop to the next place for another dollar. But it just put out the fire today. And once in a while, you're lucky you get a willing tech with great skills. But as I shared the last time, as I'll share again, all of the good conversations came out of the craziness of having a discussion with my brother Richie and I at 2 a.m. in our office as the last 2 techs at a 25 standing. And he would go, why don't they do this? And why don't they do that? And I go, if they could do all of that, why would they be working here? Number one. And number two, there's no clones coming. you get what you get. So you don't get to pick the pieces. They come with their baggage. I said, also, this is a lot like trying to catch lightning in a bottle. Once in a while, you get lucky, you'll find that magic tech, or what now today is the unicorn, right? It's really hard to replicate that. And if you had to buy them, you're going to have to keep on buying them. So in the 80s, we learned a pretty good trick. That was my tease. Would you like to know?
Yeah, let's hear it.
I thought you were just gonna keep going and tell us.
I do every now and then have to come up for oxygen.
Or at least sip on the beer.
Or have a sip on beer, which is
Right.
when I sip on the beer, it's like a pause for thinking.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really drinking. It's all about thinking. So really in the 80s, I was sharing the story before we came on, which is about my brother Richie and I, who were the two outside guys. My brother Marty was the inside guy, which was a blessing to me and Richie. We were 70 people, 25 techs, 17 million in sales. And all of these conversations about what was going on. Anyway, we're in our late 20s, early 30s, sitting in the audience. And a guy on the stage back then said, the average age of the tech is going to be 50. Now, to a bunch of young guys, we were horrified when I describe it. And so we said, we got to get busy building a training center. And so sure enough, we built a hands-on training center, and I did the training of these guys. I got out in the field, and my brother Richie would call me up a year later and go, I'm out on a job, and didn't you show him like motor rotation? I go, I did. And then he would call up, later on about another guy about, didn't you show him this? And finally, I just said to him, they're out there for a year from the training. They have nothing to lean on. So that's what actually caused us to back up and write the operating manuals so that we had this repeatable performance thing to lean on. So we get busy creating the manuals, which I shared the last time with 150 grand, today's money. And when we got done, we looked at the manuals and we looked at the training center and we realized we built it all wrong. Which, of course, like everything, is funnier today, right? So why I say that is the tasks that are in the manuals tells us what we need to put in the training center so that we could teach them how to sell that task, how to be neat and clean, how to do a technically expert repair, and how to exit the job the right way. So we had to rebuild it, which once we got over ourselves is not the worst thing in the world. And by the way, for any of you who have a training center or are going to build a training center, let me assure you this. Your first training center is your worst training center.
Mm-hmm.
It has an evolution. I built multiple ones for myself, and I've helped build them everywhere in USA and Canada, and they have a evolutionary life. It depends on, do you take on extra trades? Like for us, originally we were just in the heating trade, but as we bought into a plumbing business, air conditioning, and now electrical, we had modules that fit along to we learned this time, build the manuals first and then build the training center. But the piece that's most people miss is the training curriculum, which is like the bridge between the two. Mm-hmm. And that you have to become a great trainer. So you guys listen, because this is going to be a tease here. Would you like to know what it takes to become a great trainer and why you have to become the great trainer?
So let me ask you this, Al. What does it take to become a great trainer, and why do you need to become one?
That's such a great question. I've never even thought about that, but let me freewheel it.
I just came up with it on the top of my head.
Just out of the blue. Yeah. So Richie and I had gone to so many classes and seminars over the time. We were very lucky. And frankly, we had a lot of great mentors come into our life. And I never forget that, by the way. I'm where I am today because of the great mentors. And frankly, also the great clients I work with kept on making me better and better. But what we realized, and what I said to Richie, was that we have to become better trainers, and that the majority of the training has to be done here, 80% of it done here. And then, yes, of course, we're going to send to outside training and going to classes and training and seminars and trade shows and the rest of it, taking our guys to that stuff. But 80% of it needs to be done here. But think about it, Rich. How many times have we had somebody who knew their subject ice cold? They were the best. Problem is, unless you can learn in your sleep, it won't help you because they're so boring. And so you'll be asleep trying to learn whatever they're talking about. And then the other side of this is there's a charismatic, funny person, great trainer, until you ask them one question with any kind of depth, and they are totally revealed. And so we took it upon ourselves to become better trainers. And there's a lot of great training out there. I went through Dale Carnegie's training. I went through there's American Workshop training. And then I always got better at training. And luckily, I had a great friend who wrote the book, about how to teach technicians without putting them to sleep, which is really a backbone, Dan Holohan. And if you guys know Ellen, that's the triangle between the three of us. We all got better at training. But it really is something that you, whoever you are, need to commit to. But I have a funny connection about training that I didn't know when I first started. So I'm not going to actually, you can ask, what should I know about the connection of the training that you didn't know, Al?
Okay, so Al, let me ask you a question here. It just
Yeah,
came to
go
the
ahead.
top of my head. What is the connection on the training, which you didn't know that you had?
Well, I didn't realize that the better I got as a trainer, the better I got at sales. And the better I got at sales, the better I got at marketing. So when you improve any one of those three legs, the other two get stronger. Because training is really about sales. You two guys are sitting out there, whether you're an apprentice trying to go to junior tech, a junior tech trying to go to senior tech, or a senior tech going to field supervisor. My job is to sell you on why you should know this information. I have to unlock your brain first so that I can give you the information. And that's where the training skills kick in. Because most of us as trainers, when we first start, have a plate of spaghetti and we throw it against the wall and see what sticks. And I did that. And I actually did it for a very long time until I followed Dan's great advice. He goes, Al, you ought to videotape what you're doing because you don't know what you're doing. It's kind of like CSRs who don't know what they sound like on the phone, right? Because they're following the scripts. But as you guys know, it's horrific. And so I did this. So imagine this big whiteboard. I have, 10 guys that I pay, and I turn on my back on them and just start writing on a whiteboard for 10 minutes and never look back. Now, the only reason they didn't walk out or throw anything at me is because I did sign their paycheck. But when you watch yourself on video, even without a coach, I guarantee you will get better.
Yep.
Yeah. So becoming a better trainer is really the secret sauce between the manuals that tell you how to build a hands-on training center, the training curriculum, and you being a better trainer. And really, if I can back it up, this program is really about what I used to do only with one-to-one clients. I knew, just like me, they wanted to solve their tech problem, right? And when I say tech problem, what I mean for a service tech is great at sales, operation, technical. That's how I judge you as a service tech. And as an installer, great at communication, operation, technical. Now, if I can have you trained here and I show you how to do it, and then you do it in front of me, when you get out in the field, because I'll do ride-alongs with you, that's what behavior I'm looking for, so that we can check you off and release you for tasks, which is much easier today, pretty much with any software, that we can get you to these jobs and you can start making yourself a lot of money, and us too.
Right. So let's back this up a little bit, because if I'm sitting here and I'm listening to this show right now as a home service business owner, this sounds like a lot of fucking work. And it seems like it would be a lot easier to just put up an ad on Indeed and hope and pray that people show up to my door. Obviously, that's not working for most people, which is why they complain about having a staffing issue. The thing that I think this really solves, and I mentioned this right before the show, is it's that reactionary versus proactive approach. So for the business owner that's sitting there saying, how the hell do I do this? Where the hell do I start? And they don't even see this necessarily as an option for them right now based on where they are at. What would you say to them to start to shift the psychology behind why training and recruiting is better than hiring?
So the very first thing that we were not, which is the first phase, there's 3 phases to the staffing program, which mirrors what I did with one-to-one contractors all across the country, who, by the way, do not have a problem with tech shortages today. So this is an ancient history. This is right now.
Right.
And on that page, there are 6 testimonials from clients talking about how they solved the staffing problem. And the reason there's only 6 is because I only called 6 of them. So you are not a guinea pig. Is it hard work? Is it money? Yes. Are you enjoying what you have right now? Probably not, because I've been in your chair. And here's what it was way back when. We were never proactive. And so once in a while, and this is a union shop, once in a while, a guy would give us 2 weeks notice. And we thought, that's pretty good. Sometimes we get a 1 week's notice. Still pretty good. Sometimes we'd find the keys on the dashboard and we would look at each other and go, does Evident That Is still work here? Because we didn't know that they had left us. And now, of course, we were desperate. So Marty, the inside guy, nicknamed our recruiting hiring process as the mirror, MIRROR. You fog it, you're hired. And so, yes. And if that worked, I never would have stopped. If stealing your text worked, never would have stopped. If wrecking my pay scale would have worked, never would have stopped. If it could knock my callbacks down, I never would have stopped. Here's the 3 things that you need to work on is find the holes in your existing texts because they all have it. And they are deathly afraid you'll find out. But with this systems that I'm talking about, you make it safe for them. As a matter of fact, myself, my brother Richie, and our service manager have to practice because I'm not saying that we were smart, but we liked knowing what the 2 of you didn't know. And then we would just talk in front of the other techs and go, you believe he doesn't know how to change that circulator? You believe he doesn't know how to change that motor and belt? You know, whatever it was hysterically funny to all of us. But of course, if we did that, would you ever expose what else you don't know? The answer, of course, was a screaming no.
Right.
So the 3 of us, my service manager, Richie, and I had to say, whatever you don't know is now my problem. We will go out in the training center with the manuals. We will do this task together. I'll do it. You read the manuals. You'll do it with reading the manuals. Let's get it set up so we can check this off and you can get better. And they loved that. They actually loved it. The next one is the new people that you hire experienced because you stole them or you got lucky. But if you ask them in an interview, do you know what to do on a frozen air conditioning coil when you arrive? Absolutely. Seen 1,000 of them. And we go, okay, because we're desperate. Sounds good to me until it's out in the field. Now, maybe they didn't lie or even exaggerate. They watch their uncle do something and they think they now know how to do it, which is not. And even if they're good, could they do it the HVAC unlimited way of doing things? No, not unless you put it in the manual and train on it. There's no way that they would know. So find the holes in this step. But actually, this goes to the 5 steps of staffing. Always be recruiting, which we were never. And by the way, we were great marketers. But we were also stupid. We didn't apply our great marketing skills to recruiting. Because what is marketing? This target audience that I want more of. So if I want to be recruiting, I'm looking for, yes, hiring some experienced techs who have great skills. The bigger you go, the more selective you can be. The more your systems are in place, the better you can widen out that field. But ultimately for us, it came down to building techs from apprentices with no skills into willing techs with great skills. And when you can do that, the top of the funnel is this big, as wide as you can imagine. And even to this day, now you have to work harder today to find young apprentices. But if you are the employer of choice and you show me the box org chart and you tell me how I can climb, and I go out and see that hands-on training center and I meet with the 2 of you who once was me, and now you're out in your own truck making money, I want to be in this organization. And everyone will tell you exactly what I just said. You become the employer of choice if you go this path.
Yep.
If you don't go this path, can you find success? Of course you can. It's going to be a lot harder because that trail's been blazed.
Well, you look at somebody like we had on our show a little while ago, Tommy Mellow, who you know quite extensively and have likely done a lot of work with him in terms of his recruiting and his philosophies and everything that goes behind that. He gets known as one of the premier places to work within
Oh, yeah.
every market that he's in. You know, he goes out to a restaurant and he can identify somebody that potentially has good talent to move them out of that role, or it doesn't have to be a restaurant, and this can be anywhere, and just identifying, be recruiting, and they go check you out. Now they're into this, to this funnel, to this, I want to say this whole hole, really,
Yeah.
but it's not the right wording. You know, they
Not
come
the
in
right
and now they, but they, you know, yeah, I'm drawing a blank on this one for the words, but they're part of it, right? They see it. They also can see the culture too that you create. I mean, you can go out and say, "Hey, come work at my place." If you're out, you know, at a restaurant, and then they come and look at you, and you're off, your place of business is a piece of shit. Sorry, they're going to move on, right? So you also have to try to do good things in order to have your recruiting be effective with it.
Yeah, no question about it. I shared this with Tommy when I was doing the one-to-one work. We worked a couple of years together, and he was always trying to hire experienced garage door techs. And I said, you're going to run out of runway with this. And all the problems he was already putting up with. The thing that most of us owners will never speak to, we are hostages to our own employees. One day I woke up in a cold sweat, and a lot of things changed because I walked into a very small office about the size of this, where my dad and my two brothers were sitting, because my father was a firm believer that we don't make any money with you here. Go out and do something. And so I said to him, I woke up this morning with a cold sweat thinking they could all quit, and I feel like a hostage at my own company. How about you guys? And they all go, yeah, we feel the same way. What are you going to do about it? And that really was the birth of the manuals and the training and all these other things as well. So I mentioned to Tommy, he said, well, where do I find these guys? And I go, if you go to a restaurant or you go to a convenience store, any place you have great service, you know, hand them a card, tell them to come work with you. Because what Richie and I figured out so many years ago, and that's why I've shared this advice in some much tougher areas than Phoenix, trust me. I said, who has a lousier job than we do as techs in the industry? Long hours, the rest of the stuff. And I immediately thought to myself, the restaurant trade or the convenience store trade, long hours and frankly, miserable pay and really no career advancement. Well, I can top that. We had great retirement plans. We had great health plans. We had a step up every time you came out of training. You got a bump in pay and a bigger suitcase to go in to sell good suggestions to customers to which they rightfully said yes to, and you could make more money. And so, of course, Tommy tops all of what I taught him and just makes it better. Like he goes, well, I don't do that anymore. I just use my phone and say, hey, could you just, and he scans it. So of course it's the same technique, only better. He's a big believer in technology, as you know. And even the training center that we built was everything that I talked about. It has to be, you know, like real game time conditions. So I feel like I'm going to a customer's home, which was great until Tommy bought the building next door and then took it to another level. So yeah, you know, it's really good, but the foundational stuff is still the same. Always recruiting, which is marketing, always hiring, because again, proactively, where we finally learned to give them a written test. I mean, not just for techs, by the way, everybody, a short written test. And then we had actually a practical hands-on skill test where we just rigged up a couple of problems, gave them a toolbox, and find out where you fit in the pay scale. And if they weren't a good fit, fine. If they were willing to try, at least, we could find a spot for them. So that was really good. But the third piece that I didn't know about, now remember, we were desperate, right? Originally. So the piece I couldn't, like I said, I couldn't even spell it, was orienting, always orienting. You know, by the time you guys show up, we just throw the keys at you and go, let's go.
There you go.
And so we had to learn how to orient better, especially once you have systems. Like the very first thing that have a 5 or 10 day scripted what they do in their first 5 to 10 days. And so we had the manuals, and what we really spent time doing on the front end was getting the manuals in. Now we started to buy in more into orienting. But a quick story is one of my early clients, the great Lowry Services, I worked with Joe, and he was phenomenal. And when I told him about the recruiting, hiring, orienting press, he stopped me at orienting and goes, you know, that's the most important step. And I'm like, what? He goes, yeah. He goes, the way I orient you in the first 2 weeks dictates the success you have with me for the rest of your career. And I just kind of lean back and go, that's kind of a big statement, don't you think, Joe? He goes, it's not. Think of when you were in junior high school or middle school. You were the big man in a small pool, right? But as soon as you went off to high school, you were that little fish again in a very big pond. Would it have been nice to have a big brother, big sister? And that's really what orientation is. And then the fourth step is training, which is always training. Now there's meetings, there's weekly trainings, there's meetings on that. But ultimately, the big block is to take you from a young, willing apprentice to a junior tech where you can't do everything in my trade manuals, but you can do enough that it's worthy of putting you out in a truck and going to make yourself money and me money and beginning your clock. And then bringing you back, whether it's 6 months or a year later, to take you from junior tech to senior tech, where I teach you the tasks I did not teach you the first time. And then when your company gets big enough, and it's usually 8 to 12 service techs, your service manager becomes the choke point at your company because all of them are trying to reach that person. And you're going to lose those guys when they hit 35 and 40 anyway. So what we created is service field supervisors, 2 of them, right. Split the teams. You don't ever want to really create 1. So you create 2. But here's the problem everybody does, and this is why it's in phase 3, senior tech to field supervisor. They go, well, these guys are great techs. They'll make great field supervisors. Not necessarily. The real is they never were a boss. So what would they base it on? Right. They heard that bosses are SOBs, so they're just going to be miserable and yell at everybody. Or that I should be their best friend, and you're going to lose either way. So they need to learn how to do this job. And there's a manual for that. Surprise, surprise. How to be a field supervisor. But there's also a complete training class. And what I advocate and what I have taught is you qualify, then you compete, and ultimately the winners get trained. And that really changes that. They don't ride around all day. Field supervisors it's a kind of a name where you think they're just riding around. They're not. But they're the first line of support for their team. And the same thing applies with install. Typically, if you have 3 crews, you're already beginning to work your way up to where you would have an install field supervisor. So that's the snapshot of what I used to do in multiple phases at companies, the staffing thing. And your point is too, is I'm crazy busy. Isn't it easier to just run a great ad, pay way over the price limit and go? You would think so.
So, I mean, well, that probably gets into your 5th one, on there. And I know we're kind of, we talked a little bit about the training, but I did have, 2 thoughts. One, kind of going back. Well, actually, no, I'll do the first thought and then I'll ask the question. A lot of times people think, okay, well, I'm going to hire when I get into the supervisor role or manager role or team lead or project manager or however you want to phrase it. You take the best skilled person at the job and they're like, great, you're a manager now. Great, you're a supervisor now. But they might not be the right person for the job. Just because they possess the technical knowledge and the abilities to be able to do that doesn't mean they're going to possess the interpersonal skills to be able to adequately manage and supervise the team that is below them. And so sometimes don't get trapped in that. If you're a business owner, look at that and be able to separate some of those things out. And if you have, I'm sure there's training and resources in your manual and your programs to be able to help identify a good supervisor from a bad supervisor from that. And maybe we can circle back to that question. But the other part that I know we chatted about it, I believe on the second one, always be hiring.
Yeah. I
think a lot of people get stuck in the view of, great, well, I don't need to hire right now. All my trucks are full. What's the point of always be hiring if I don't have any opportunity to fill to put the seats into the people into the seats in the vehicles? Is there a way around that? Is there a way to still be hiring now to be able to keep perhaps resumes in your desk for when you're ready for that role? Where's kind of a middle ground and in between ground there?
Well, all the shops that I work with, Tommy, of course, is penultimate, where he just graduated 39 people at one blast. Now, I used to just do 5, take 5 guys at a time. I would go to class to try to graduate 3. And if I put a truck on the road, it was probably around $300,000. So I added $900,000 to my company. And when I wanted to do it twice, So even with that failure rate, 3 out of 5, which you may go, oh, why didn't I graduate all 5? Sometimes I kick them out and sometimes they quit. But if I could still get these 3 trucks, that was a monstrous difference to our company. Now just do that with the math for 39. And even my old Drain franchise, they're graduating 20 guys at a time because they've got these systems down. I'm not advocating you run out there, but here's what I know, because I'm going to get the first part of this question is, well, I'm already staffed up. I'm going to ask you the question that only you know about there. Aren't there 2 knuckleheads that you've been putting up with their misbehavior? I mean, not enough to like get fired. Pointing up to that box. Not enough.
Well, you said 2 knuckleheads, so I'm assuming you're directly calling out myself and Evan. So
because that was always my thing. I knew I was always kicking these 2 guys on because I didn't want 2 trucks sitting in the yard.
Right.
I mean, they were 2 rolling cash registers. So we put up with bad behavior, and you know it. Also, your business is either growing or you're moving backwards, and you don't even know it. Mm-hmm. And so we never had a shortage of calls. We always had more calls than we can humanly do in a day. And we also learned to hub and spoke. So we had a hub and we had spokes, even though it was just on Long Island. It was 115 miles tip to tip. We had 3 spokes and 1 hub. And so a lot of the companies are thinking ahead about how would you open a branch. The very best way to open a branch is with all the systems and to export a field supervisor to that branch so that they mirror everything that you do, or otherwise that gets disconnected. I did want to double back to a quick thing that you brought up that spurred me on this is working with a lot of companies. I would have meetings with the techs and just talk about, private meetings, which I told them when I came along, that's what I had to do. I'm not going to report back behavior. Just wanted to hear if there was a pattern. One of the things that really broke trust with techs is they thought they were rising up, and then you didn't think they were good enough, and you went outside the company to bring somebody over them. Mm. It just rips their guts out. Now, what I did is I said, I owe you an opportunity, not a guarantee, which I did not invent. When I arrived at my company, my dad said that to me. And so my preference, of course, is to hire and promote from within for these next boxes. And it's up to me to be able to train you on it. But I reserve the right to go outside the company if we can't get done. So that's really something to bear in mind. But yeah, they're not born managers. I was not a born manager. I had to go to training on it. You have to learn how to fit this big brother or big sister role. There's a reason there's a qualify, compete, and train.
No, it's a huge thing. And one thing you didn't. Yeah, I was writing, and I know that's writing too.
The international sign for if I don't have a question, I'm writing a note as my head is down.
I could just drinking or talking, either one. I could do both.
That's where you need to wet your whistle.
Well, and the other thing that Thad mentioned that you briefly touched on, but I'd love you to elaborate more, is identifying talent within your team to bring them up into that leadership role, and that the top tech, the top salesperson isn't necessarily the right fit for a manager. And I equate this to the Robert Kiyosaki quote of the A students work for the B students are the managers who work for the C students who own the business, and the D students own the building. So
no, you can't graduate. You can't graduate with a D plus. Trust me, I've tried. It didn't work. I had to take more classes to at least get a C minus to graduate.
There you go.
C's get degree.
First, you don't succeed. Try again. Well done.
That piece of paper right there is all about C minuses. So
yeah, I have an engineering degree. I'm on the top shelf that I used to keep in my desk drawer for 25 years with a towel over it. Right. So I wouldn't have anybody walking in and abusing me about why their car doesn't work and what us crazy engineers do, because I never worked a day in my life as an engineer.
Right.
Yeah. There you go.
I got a diploma, and I always used to say, good thing it's laminated, because otherwise I would wipe my posterior.
That's about as useful as it is.
No, actually, it was really good. I did learn how to problem solve, and I think I'm as good as I am. Yeah. So yeah, good education.
Yeah, like how to come up with enough money to drink on the weekends.
So really, the idea of it is really that you earn each box up the org chart.
Yes.
So I'm a good apprentice. What am I looking for in this first 60 to 90 days? Can you show up every day? Mm-hmm. Can you show up on time? Can you be clean and sober? Can you be willing to get dirty but try to stay clean? Do you get good marks when I move you around for multiple people, or are they going to tell me what we used to call a leaner? And what is a leaner? It means I'm leaning on the wall while you're working, or I'm playing with my phone instead of being right there with you. Go, what are we doing? How are we doing? They want to get, that's what my staff wanted to know, because they didn't want to be saddled with these guys. Right. This is the classic thing about A and B players. Hate that you tolerate C and D players. Mm-hmm. Hate it. So your obligation is either get C and D players to be at least a B, or you got to move them on.
Right.
And that's why this always recruiting, always hiring, always orienting, and then always training, which allows you to do this.
100%. Well, and sometimes it takes elevating someone who is a C player into a leadership type role where maybe they don't have the respect of the team in terms of what they can do as a technician, but they get people to get work done. Right. I think of myself as an example. I was not a great, when Thad would ask me to do something, he was my manager at a previous company. I wouldn't do it very well. But when I had someone else that I was teaching, I could get them to do it 10 times better than I could do it. Right. And so like we're doing this right now within our organization where we have level 5 people that are amazing at executing at specific areas of marketing, SEO, paid ads, etc.
Right.
We have other people in the organization that aren't as good as them, but they are great at communication and they are great at getting people to buy into what it is that we're trying to achieve. They're the ones that we're looking at for that leadership role.
I think, for myself, my father impressed on me pretty early on that I should never ask anybody to do anything that I hadn't done myself.
Yep.
And to be truthful, I didn't really like that idea when I was young.
No, it's a pain in the ass.
Well, yeah, because I said I didn't stop doing the recruiting and hiring until I was gone. I was that important to the team, the culture, and the growth. And so when you would guys be sitting in a chair talking to me, and I would just say, look, if I'm not going on a roof in the dead of winter, you don't have to go. But if I am, you're coming with me. And if that doesn't sit well with you, you ought to get up and go right now. Now, why could I do that? Because I was proactive and I wasn't looking for the ready-made skill thing here. I was looking for willingness, and I had a lot of willingness tests that I was doing towards this. Plus, in my particular case, which is getting back to recruiting, which we all know is if you want more of your ideal customer, well, make them get a testimonial of them telling everybody how great you are and whatever you do is great. Well, that's the same thing here. Is if I've taken a young apprentice and moved them all the way up the ladder, put them out on video, TikTok, social media, everything you can, including young apprentices about why this is a great place. And every one of the clients that I've worked with do that to this day. It's just a different platform than what used to be used. And it's all good. It's a very visual thing that you need to do with this. But in my case, in my interviews, when I would get done, I would tell them, look, these two guys, Thaddeus and Evan, both were you. They're going to come in and I'm going to leave. You can ask them any question you want because they've been just like you. And so that helped them see that path about, oh, well, you know what? I could be him. He's not that much older than me. I could get that path. So for me, though, I like you to be able to fill the box, and I will do everything in my power to help you fill that box because I want you to fill this box before you've earned my training to the next box. Do you have to be, there's many companies I've worked with where they had a service manager who was really great at technical, but it stunk all the other things. Their office was a mess. Their truck was a mess. And Dad, I copy what you do. And you could talk all day. I'm going to be just like you. And one of my jobs was to clean up Richie's desk. And so, that's really kind of the thing is, my feeling is that you lead from the front. Does that mean it's the only management style? Of course not.
Right.
But if you have great training and you're able to clarify, it's a reason to help people step up. And one of my great clients, Tim from Massachusetts, said, I learned to give them a great reputation to live up to, and then I give them the training to make it. Yeah.
There's a lot there. One thing that popped off into me is, you mentioned in passing your ideal customer in your ICA. Now you can also reverse that into your ideal team member. And that also leads into the fifth step of the staffing power. However, we're going to get to that in a second because we're going to have to do our random question generator.
Nice tease.
Like that, right? I was paying attention to you at the beginning of the show. So
There you go.
every now and again, I come up with a good segue in the show. So random question time, one of our favorite parts of the show, what has absolutely zero to do with anything we're talking about. So I have 3 options pulled up on my screen here for you, Al. You get to choose option 1, 2, or 3.
I love options. Let's roll.
All right. So which one do you want to go with? 1, 2, or 3?
I'm going to go with 1. I'm number 1.
You're number 1. What is the best way to get over a breakup?
Well, based on the fact that I just celebrated my 45th wedding anniversary with my wife and we're still talking to each other, I might not be the best expert, but the best way to get over a breakup is to look at yourself and go, was it me? And, it's a hard one because you really have to look at it. It's so much easier to blame them. Tell me how that's different than your non-performing employees, because I used to do it all the time. They didn't do this and they didn't do that. And I got busted big time by the guy at the Jack Tester next door at that time, where he said it's always the owner. Did I say something that he jumped off the screen?
No, he put it in chat quick that he had to step out for a second. So
okay.
Nature calls, I guess.
Yeah. Whatever.
No,
if we're really about preparation, you need to do the bio break before.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny. I'll never forget it. I used to have a subscription to Success Magazine back when Darren Hardy was the publisher of it way back when. And he was interviewing Jennifer Aniston and she was talking about her breakup with Brad Pitt. So like, this is a long ass time ago.
Yes.
But one of the things that she said in there is I had to give myself one day to have a little pity party and just cry and blame other people and blame everyone else. After that, it was on me. Even if 99% of this breakup was because of someone else, that 1% was the part that I could focus on because that was the part that I could make a difference on.
I love that.
When you look at your business, it's the exact same thing.
I love that. And also you have to ask yourself, what type of people are you attracting into your life?
Mm-hmm.
Without getting metaphysical, I'll leave that to Ellen. She's way better at it. But I have come to believe that it's not by accident.
Yes.
And traveling to enough other companies, their staff is really a result of who they mirrored themselves in.
1000%.
The trick here is you don't mirror yourself necessarily in a good way. You also mirror yourself in a bad way.
Yep.
If you want to prove that there's nobody out there that can help you, you will find those people. And even if you find people who want to help you, you will unknowingly sabotage them so that they can't help you. And I was like that.
Yeah.
But I didn't even know it. And it really wasn't until my friend held a truth mirror up to my face and I realized, why was I having so many problems?
Right.
I loved being the rescuer, riding to the rescue. I loved being the guru. I was the smartest guy in the room. And if you two want to know anything, you're going to have to ask me. And then the last one is I like being a fireman. Who's a kid doesn't want to grow up and be a fireman, right? So I was great at putting out fires. So I was always in the firefighting mode and never in the fire prevention mode. And as long as those of you out there, as long as you're attached to those identities, you will be sabotaged in the same way, and you will have multiple bad breakups in your life.
Business partners, actual relationships.
Yes.
Employees.
Yes.
Managers. The people that you thought you could count on most will leave.
Yep. And it'll always be easier to blame them, but it's ultimately you.
100%.
I used to do this leadership exercise. If you put your arms out as far as you can in front of you, I was trained on this in one of these things. All you control is inside here. And I have long arms. Here's the good news. This is where the biggest change happens. If you're willing to do that,
right,
is control what's going on in here. And I had to learn how to take that to make progress. Otherwise I would have bucked it all along. Again, it's much easier to blame them.
Yes.
It's easy to say there's no great techs out there, and there aren't enough great techs out there. And the guy who sold me with all the great stuff is not the great stuff. Oh, you ever been on a date and that's not really the person?
Yeah, that's a lot of fun.
Yeah, you can see that
We
quite a bit
we all show
online.
ourselves on our date,
Yeah.
especially our first date.
Yeah, especially the first date.
Mm.
So I assume we're still in the random question generator. I had to step out very briefly there.
I expertly
breakup?
handled that question.
Okay, perfect. I was going to say the advice that my father had given me one time is the best way to get over one is to get under another.
I will say we were talking about employees, and I don't recommend you follow what he shared.
Not for employees. Do not dip your pen in the company ink. Although for Evan, it has worked out. He met his wife at one of his previous employees.
Or any other dirty laundry we'd like to air?
No.
Okay.
Hey, he would openly say that as well. That's part of the around the question, though, is it can be related to what we're talking about, or it can be related to something completely different. To kind of finish off the thought and bringing it back to the next step. And then you mentioned that there's not enough great techs out there, or some people are saying I can't find help. There's not enough great people. Why? Yet there's other people that are saying, shit, we can't create enough positions fast enough for all the people that are coming into our organization. So there's this big disparity between these two. And I think it really has to come down to, what are you doing to retain your talent? What are you doing to create a winning environment within the business? And that happens to be your fifth S of that. So walk us through the idea of always be retaining in what a person can do to encourage and foster great company culture, but also retain employees for the long term.
I think the thing about always retaining is, think of a bathtub full of employees, and hopefully the bathtub's getting bigger and bigger as you go and grow and you're overfilling it. But there'll always be a drain wide open. And that's the employees leaving you. And so as I went along, I realized this was happening. And I would do these training classes. So just to put a little perspective in the step 2 of the program, the first 60 to 90 days was the trial period to find out if you were worthy to go to my training, because I was going to take 5 of you preferably to training. And so I'm trying to find all these great habits and get to class. And then I would spend 4 months with you. And just when you're really going to help me, 5 o'clock, Al, I feel really bad, but I've got an offer for some extra money and, I have to leave and whatever. So I was complaining to Richie. I don't think it was 2 a.m., but it was sometime I was complaining to him. And I said to him, I do all this work and they leave. And Richie was very wise. He said to me, you know what, Al, the best ones stay. Mm-hmm. And he was right, but I don't like losing. And so the very next year I ran class, here's how I started class. You ready for this? I'm going to make all of you so valuable from this training that another company is going to come along and offer you more money. And if I were you, I would absolutely be tempted to go. But one thing you need to think of, if they weren't willing to put this training in now and the training that I have for you moving forward, what makes you think they're going to advance your career any further? And I will tell you, from that day forward, I lost next to no one coming out of that class, because I switched what we talked about earlier, right? Reactive to proactive, putting that out front in the beginning. Now I had to make good on my promises. And I always spoke about where they are in the org chart and where they're moving ahead. How's their career doing? Now, I also did another good thing in retaining, was that I learned to make it a habit to a stand-up meeting, not a sit-down thing at all. Is if I pass you in the hallway or out on a job site and I go, these 3 questions. What's going right? What's going wrong? And what do I need to know right now? So what that did is I could read their enthusiasm. I could see their eye contact, and I could see their body language. And I could tell whether they had both feet in our door or they already had a foot out the door, if you know what I mean. And this was my chance to go and fix it if there was a problem. And frankly, to be relieved that they were heading out, because I had guys waiting to get their truck. Got to the point my apprentices go, oh yeah, these guys are leaving. When do I go? So that became a different cultural shift for us. But retaining is this assumption is that they're always on the team. They're not. Friend Dan told me a long time ago, he goes, you're always moving ahead in this staffing plane or you're not. You're moving backwards. It's an illusion. So he called it a staffing train. And he says, you don't know who will hop on. You don't know who will hop off. You don't know who you'll kick off. And you don't know who will ride to the end. So it's your job to make them better and happier for the journey while they're on the train. And that's how I would have you think of retaining, not for everyone that's on your team. Now, here's the other good news. If you do those first 4 steps, always recruiting, always hiring, always orienting, always training, you're less likely to have this issue. So what is ever new to you guys that, especially under 40, I have seen this movie before. Tight texts, or having more calls than I can humanly do, to having more texts than I need and not enough calls to do. I know it. I know it, and I've solved it. But the point of it is it'll come and go. You need to be proactive in this process of putting these people in the pipeline and forcing yourself. So I always talk about the 7 powers, right? You know, the planning, operations, staffing, sales coaching, marketing, finance. And I would love you to master those. But if I only had a minute of your time as you're passing through the elevator ride with me, there's 2 things you have to do as a contractor. Make more calls. And what I mean by more calls is more calls from the right customer at the right amount at the right time. And then make more techs, which means if they're a service tech, great at sales, great at operation, great at technical. If they're installers, great at communication, great at operation, great at technical. And make more of them than you can humanly handle in both cases. So it's 2 things you're always working on.
No, I love the approach that you took to retention, in looking for a way to solve the problem before it ever became a problem. An old sales trainer and a sales coach that I had was, objections are a symptom of a presentation that needs to be resolved earlier. And you took the exact same approach.
Sorry for laughing. And the reason why, as soon as you said that story, my dad was a great salesman, but he was not like me. He was very quiet, very much the servant type salesperson.
Right.
And so when I was out on sales and I was doing pretty poorly, I said, Dad, do you have a great closing line? And he was very nice. He just said, Al, if you need a great closing line, you suck till now.
It's true.
It's true. And so I had to work on my home.
Do you want to get it today? Do you want to sign up? Like you don't need some magical fancy sales closing line to get them to buy. It's just ask them to buy. And if they say yes, well, then you've done a great job. If they say no, well, then you've done a shit job.
The training center is a great place for all of this.
Yeah.
Right. So not just about technical training. And I know I have to watch the time, but one of the key things that I learned along the way is we used to think callbacks was I was there for no heat and now you have no heat today. What it really came down to is, did I communicate what I was doing? Did I look at everything I should have looked at? Did I follow a steps and process? Did I make good recommendations and not sell you a bad repair? That's really where, so good communication sales training has become the biggest fault towards callbacks. Not necessarily their technical skills or also their operational skills is if you're a mess. So my heat is working. I'm not arguing about the price, but you didn't want to put on those shoe covers and now there's mud across my white carpet. Thank you. And that's what they learn in the training center in a good staffing program.
Right. Make the mistakes here.
Yes.
So you can make more money out there.
It's a safe zone, safe spot, right? You're allowed to be able to make them in trial things too within which should be a safe atmosphere to be able to do that and having that open in there. But it also breeds into the culture aspect of things. The best ones stay.
Yep.
When you have a great retention strategy and when you put in all these 5 S's, the recruiting, the hiring, the orientating, the training, the retaining is going to come naturally. The culture that's going to be born out of that is going to be amazing. And only the ones that want to be a part of that, to be part of the ongoing training, to be part of this world-class organization that you've created are going to be the ones that are going to stay. If they want to fly under the radar and do the bare bones minimum, they're going to leave. They're going to naturally weed themselves out. I think back to an organization that we were with previous, the same one Evan had mentioned, where I was his, the manager of him, and I ran sales trainings for those individuals. And I could tell when somebody came on board into the training, if they were not a great fit for the culture. I could tell pretty much right off the bat, but it wasn't my job to tell them no. It was my job to continue to talk about the culture, do all things in terms of the organizational culture. And guess what? All those people, either they changed and adapted, which didn't really happen too often, or they removed themselves from the organization. And now you don't have that as a quote unquote cancer in the organization of somebody who might be able to taint it. But here's the other thing is, if you've created a great, strong cultural organization based off of training and learning and getting better and all these things where people want to stay, those people that are going to try to be the rotten apple, they're not going to make the other apples rotten if you have everything strong and in place. If you don't have everything strong and in place, that one rotten apple, all the apples are going to spoil and all the apples are going to go rotten. So it really starts from those fundamentals in order to put that into place.
So great. And what I share is sometimes your company gets better by the people that leave. And so you have to be aware of protecting your culture. The good news for me, even though it was a union shop, my guys were very protective of the culture when we finally turned it, when we finally changed it. And, this conversation actually came from a very bad place. When I arrived, the unions versus us was pretty head-on butt heads. Right. And I said to these guys, I said, we're going over the cliff and I'm prepared to go. Do you want to go? Because if you don't want to go, let's figure out how we can work together. And to their credit, they did. They wanted to weed out these other people. They wanted to do better work, and they wanted, to have a better future for themselves. So one of the other retaining things, though, is moving them up the org chart, really making good years ago, because we were good marketers. And when we finally got our heads around that we have to apply it to this, is we said we offer a career, not a job. And we didn't mean lip service to that. We were going to take you from apprentice to junior tech, to senior tech, to field supervisor, open up a branch and be able to do that as well. So there was always growth at our company. Right. Matter of fact, I have an interview. I go, well, there's a lot of boxes at this company except this chair. Like, your last name is Levi. Not going to happen. But before you get to that, and actually a little talk about the field supervisor position. I realized we were going to have a brain drain, and we were having this experience. If we actually ran crews, and there was nobody on the crew to lead that crew after hours. So it was chaos. But when I ran a call one day, and I was in my 30s, and I'm going, great, I get to run another no-heat call. And I'm thinking, if it wasn't me, what would I be thinking? And it immediately came to me. I would go buy a white truck, sell it for $5 less, and I'm going to make a ton of money, which is, of course, the entrepreneurial mistake that we are all prone to. Right. So I said to these guys, is if you qualify and get into this position as field supervisor, you're basically running your own company right here, because you make money on what you do and your team getting better. So you have all of our rules. You don't have the marketing headaches and all the other things and financial. And that was a great reason to keep them not only on the team, but engaged with their heart, because I didn't need their body. I needed their heart and soul.
Right. Well, and sometimes it takes opening up completely to those people who might potentially want to open their own business, but don't understand what it is that takes. The financial commitment, the time commitment, the energy commitment, the emotional commitment. Like, fuck, running a business is not easy.
No, I understand. I understand why. And obviously a lot of people have, but the fact that you're a great tech does not make you a great contractor.
1000%. Right. And I think if more people understood that and really looked at what it is that they truly wanted, I think there would be less of those types of businesses that would exist today. Yep. And people would be much happier and more fulfilled working for someone else.
Well, and possibly stay in their relationship a lot better.
Yeah.
Well, you don't want bad breakups.
Yep. No, you don't. You don't want to get under another if you're happy being with the one you're already under. Anyways, but you are right. Like, we've had numerous guests on our show, and one always comes to mind is Tersh Blissett. And when he came on, he said it before that anybody on his team, he has this open door policy that, hey, if you've ever thought about starting your own business, let's set up a meeting. Let's talk. I will open up everything to you to show you exactly what goes into it, exactly what you need to know, everything, A to Z, soup to nuts, whatever you want to call it. And then you can make the decision to be able to open up your own business or not. And if you do, guess what? I'm going to be 1000% in your corner because you have made the educated decision. It's not the person that's sitting there as a tech and say, shit, this business owner is making a fuck ton of money. I'm going to go and do my own. And then they realize that the margins aren't as great as what they thought they were because they weren't educated on it to begin with. And so, I look at also Sky Heating, right? And Travis Smith and Heather Bargender. And sorry, Heather, when you watch this and I butchered your last name, but they have, and they've taken it upon themselves to educate their team on not just a business financial level, but on a personal individual financial level, because now they're empowering their staff to say, hey, if you ever want to go do this, if you want to get better, if you need to do these things, here's the information to be able to do that. And when more businesses, I think, take this open door policy of, if you want to go run it, here you go, here's how you do it. Now we're not going to have all these chucks in a truck, using that loosely, that are underbidding their competition to have them, because they understand the economics of the business, not just what goes into my bank account and what doesn't.
Chuck in a truck, if you love it, go ahead.
Right.
But most of us, when we started the franchise, Ellen and I and Jim, we just said we're not gonna open up a franchise with one guy in a truck trying to hold his phone like this while he's working or anything else. Right. And it wasn't discriminatory. It was just a case of we were invested in success.
Right.
I think it's a life of misery for most. You work all day, you handle calls, you go home, you got to do the books, try to get paid. Heaven forbid you get sick, hurt, or any of these other things. It's a really tough life. So I would advocate growing, but growing the right way. Mm-hmm. And the very best companies do exactly what you said, is they share what behind the scenes. They open up the curtain so that you can be an educated consumer about if you're tempted to go. Some people actually team up with them, or they follow that field supervisor model that I was speaking to. As far as the price thing you mentioned, to be quick on that, is one of the things when I did Sales Power, part of it was always why the price is right. I was taught by a great Dan Weltman about how to build the price when we first went to flat rate, which I know may be new to you, but it's 30 years new. And so, how do we go to this thing about, and we make people build the price, because if you don't, here's what I told my brothers is, I get paid $30 an hour. You're charging at that time, I think it was $150 an hour, which seemed like a lot of money back then. Oh, it's $120 in your pocket. They have zero conception, and why would they, about what it takes to make the phone ring, the trucks, the licensing, the building, the permits, you name it. If you ever look at at your general ledger, if you will, all of those columns, there's a lot to figure that you don't know.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, and look, to circle back to just that, the last thing on the chuck in a truck part. If that's you, cool. I'm not disrespecting or slighting you by any stretch of the imagination by saying what I said. It takes all sorts of people to run this world. It really does. And there is a time and a place. If you're happy doing what you're doing, being you and yourself in your vehicle and making what you want to make, and you're happy in doing that, all the power to you.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll tell you, Ellen Rohr's husband, Hot Rod, after they had built their great plumbing heating company and sold to their employees, he just wanted to work by himself. He was into radiant heat. They moved down to Springfield, and we talked, and he got to set the market because there was nobody really else competing. And if you wanted the great hot rod, you're going to pay up for it. And, because there were people that he already had on his financial team, he didn't have to bother himself with those things. Right. And yes, you could outsource it, but that's, I would say, more the exception than the rule. But again, I don't argue with anyone's success. I just don't want you to struggle. There's a reason that I've always said less stress and more success.
Well, Al, we're coming up to the end of our time here today. So I do want to ask a couple last questions. So number one, is there anything that we didn't cover today that you wanted to touch on?
Yeah, it just, I want you to get out of your own way and recognize that this will come again.
Mm-hmm.
If you think you have it solved, wonder if you do, because I didn't. And so Manuel's platform leading to staffing and being this proactive that I speak about it, but actually having this ability to do all the things it takes to move somebody from apprentice to junior tech to senior tech to field supervisor the right way. And there are pieces to it. That's really my encouragement, however you choose to do it. But even if you just get better at always recruiting and hiring, and you just take those two pieces, well, glad you were here, because that's what I want to deliver.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. No, 100%. And if you ever wanted to reach out to Al, by the way, I did run that math. You said 39 trucks earlier in the show at $300,000 of an average truck per year is $11.9 million. So that was math. That was the math that I ran. And so if you're thinking, hey, great, I want to hire, I want to take these 5 S's to the next step, I'll shameless plug you here in a second. But now you have to run some marketing behind that.
Yes.
So you should reach out to, oops, wrong one, On Purpose Media. I said text. Well, yeah, actually, you can text us 719-824-1377 if you want to have a discovery call and have a conversation with us about the marketing needed to get there. Of course, onpurposemedia.ca/book a call was the other one. However, if you're already there and you want to chat with Al about what he does in terms of the 7 Power Contractor, so it is 7, so the number 7, powercontractor.com. These, of course, will be in all of our show notes later. If you want to specifically on the staffing essentials, what we chatted about today, 7powercontractor.com/S3. And if you want to reach out to Al directly, Al at 7powercontractor.com. That is 7, the number 7, Al at 7powercontractor.com.
And because you need to always be doing what 2 things? Making more calls and more texts.
There you go.
Always.
Always.
One last question for you, Al.
Yep.
What's one question that you wish people would ask you more, but they don't?
I would say what gets in the way of most contractors' success is the question that I really would like to get to. And I know for myself, and now, of course, working with so many people. What made us a great tech is our attention to details and trying to be perfect. And what gets in the way of us as an owner is trying to be perfect. When I finally got to say this at the end of the day, and this is hard for a perfectionist, good enough for today, I'll make it better tomorrow, to get it out in the world. That's a big shift.
It's massive.
Well, huge shift. And like one of the things that I've said numerous times again, and Evan probably already knew what I was going to say, is done is better than perfect. Yes. I'm not the type A perfectionist type of an individual. I just want it done. And I don't care if it's perfect or not. I just want it done and I want it out there. And you can iterate it and change it and adapt it. Like, fuck, I was looking at our social media feed because I get the memories popped up, and like we've been doing on our own side, our content game for a year and a half, 2 years now. And some of the things that we put out 2 years ago and shit even a year ago sucked. No, straight up. Like I look at the background, I look what I did. Like I was in my kitchen with like a selfie. I'm like, what the fuck's going on with my hair? I'm like, Jesus Christ, man! Like get a fucking hat so it's branded at least. Yeah. But that's the thing, is it was done, right? Yeah. It wasn't perfect. You do it, and as you do it, you learn how to get it done better. And you'll
get smarter. You'll be smarter as you go. I looked, I was doing the best work for heating boilers at the time on the island, and that's not a brag. You can ask anybody else. I came back to a job 10 years later, and I go, what was I thinking? Because now I knew more, and I was better. Yeah, right. And that's all that happens. So good. Give yourself a break.
There it is. Well, 2 things that I think are incredible about what it is that you're putting on here with this S3 program and staffing. You need to have an excellent psychology, and you need to have an excellent strategy. And you touch on both of these things through this program. You touched on both of those things here today. If your mind isn't right, your head isn't right, you're never going to be able to achieve the things that you want to achieve. And you're going to be the reason why you don't achieve what you want to achieve. And then if you don't have the right strategy, I don't even care if you're trying to bake a cake, but you have the wrong ingredients, you will never bake a cake, period. You need the right ingredients. You need the right strategy. Al has both of these things laid out for you. You could try and figure it out for yourself, but why do that when you can compress decades into days and get through this program as fast as possible, stand on the shoulders of giants who have already achieved these things and get it done quicker? There's my plug for you, Al. I hope it was helpful. Thank you so much for coming on here and dropping nothing but value for so many people. I think if people simply listened to this and actually executed on what it is that you talked about today and did it for themselves, they would be far better off than where they are today. And that makes a huge difference in people's lives. So thank you for taking the time to do this.
So much.
And for those that really need the accountability, get registered for Al's program, because it's going to make a difference in your business moving forward. So thank you so much, Al. And until next time, cheers.
Cheers.
I thought you were going to say something else like we chatted about last night.
For a second, I was thinking it was me that I blew it. What was he supposed to say?
No.
And that's the way the cookie crumbles. There you go.
Well, that's a wrap on another episode of HVAC Success Secrets Revealed. Before you go, two quick things. First off, join our Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/HVAC Revealed. The other thing, if you took one tiny bit of information out of this show, no matter how big, no matter how small, all we ask is for you to introduce this to one person in your contacts list. That's it. That's all. One person. So they too can unleash the ultimate HVAC business. Until next time, cheers.